So, good morning, dear friends and colleagues. Welcome at the annual Middle Eastern Conference of Metropolitan University Prague. With a slight delay, which is usual in the Middle East, we are starting with a very hot topic of the Middle Eastern issues and how they are reflected in international and also Middle Eastern media. My name is Břetislav Tureček, and I am head of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at our university. I'm very happy that we once again succeeded to bring very interesting foreign and domestic guest speakers. I'm also happy if you see the two prominent foreign guests' names, Mr. Abdel Bari Atwan and Mr. Ben-Dror Yemini, representing two, I would say, I'm not shy to say, two opposite views of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You see that we do not respect the social bubbles as they exist today, the pro-Israeli bubble and pro-Palestinian bubble. You see that we have one huge, I would say, a general bubble where we try to enable a discussion, open discussion with conflicting views. And this is why we organize such conference every year. Before our guests will have a floor to represent their view of the media attitude, I would like to give a floor to Professor Michal Klíma, who is Rector of the Metropolitan University Prague and who has a few welcoming words for all of us.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, students. I am very glad that we can organize today such important and very interesting conference. As Břetislav Tureček already said, it's the annual conference on the Middle East, and today the main topic, as it was said, is on the role of media and PR wars. For Metropolitan University, maybe I would like to present very quickly, very shortly, why we organize such events as such conferences. It is because Metropolitan University is the center of international relations educations in the Czech Republic, as well as international relations research. We have at our university international relations at bachelor level, master level, as well as doctoral levels, and not only in the Czech version, but parallelly we teach this program in English. So I'm very glad that also here are students from around the world. At the same time, we have here program of Asian studies. So we have many cooperations with not only with universities on the Middle East area, but also in Asia. Concerning this conference, I would like to say that for us it's very important to offer forum for debates, for exchange of view, because you know that Middle East is a very turbulent area, and today you know all events around Syria, around Yemen, and relationship concerning Israel and Palestine. So I think this conference will be a good opportunity to exchange of views, and our role is to encourage this debate. And at the end, I would like, of course, warmly welcome experts which will debate today and which will give you their views. Thank you for coming, also representatives of embassies today, and for experts in medias, and of course I warmly welcome here our colleagues from the Czech universities as well as from Czech media. So I wish you good luck and very fruitful and interesting conference today. Thank you. And thank you very much to Břetislav Tureček, who is head of the Middle Eastern Study Center and who is the main organizer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, thanks a lot, Professor Klíma. As you see from the program, the conference is divided into 3 panels, basically. Now we are about to start with the first one, which is devoted to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As you know, one thing is the conflict itself, the other thing is its reflection in media, and then it depends which media we have in mind in that moment. Therefore, I am very happy to welcome really a veteran and senior journalist representing, I would say, a Palestinian point of view, Mr. Abdel Bari Atwan, who is residing in London, in UK, for decades. He worked for many years, and he actually established a newspaper, Al-Quds Al-Arabi. And now he's working in a new, I would say, a media electronic platform since some 5 years. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Atwan, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm really very grateful and thankful to Břetislav and Metropolitan Prague University to give me this opportunity to meet with you and to talk to you and to discuss one of the hottest issues in the Middle East. I believe it's still the hottest, simply because I cannot see Middle East as safe and stable and secure without finding suitable and acceptable solution to this conflict, which actually started more than 100 years ago. So, talking about the media, I will refer to my experience with the Western media in particular for the last 40 years from my base in London and also through my travel to the Middle East. Without actually talking about the grievances of the Palestinian, my people in that part of the world, it is extremely difficult to understand how the media, Western media, is functioning. To say that the Western media is very sympathetic and taking the Palestinian side, I believe this is a myth. I disagree with that completely. Actually, we are suffering for the last 100 years of the media bias toward the Israeli. You know the story. We were living in our land. We were very humble. We were very poor. And suddenly there was a mandate, British imperialism of Palestine. And then there was Jewish immigration. And after that, we were kicked out of our lands. And about 800 or 700,000 Palestinians were actually kicked out of their land, and we became in diaspora, we became refugees in the neighboring countries. So we actually were not that advanced. Imagine, they solved the Jewish problem. I mean, the international power, the British, the French, the American, they solved the Jewish problems in Europe in our accounts in that part of the world. So there is no comparison at all between us and the Israelis who actually took over and who established their state on our account. There is no comparison at all. They came from Europe, from highly sophisticated backgrounds, from actually highly sophisticated media power with highly sophisticated support from the imperialistic countries, from European countries, and they have a lot of money because they were supported by the Jewish community all over the world. So when we talk about the media, for example, we always struggling in our part of the world in order to express our point of view, to say, what is our grievance, why we reached this stage. For the last 60 years or 70 years, the Western government came to us and say, look, you Palestinian, you are trying to use armed struggle in order to liberate your lands or to reach your rights. I think you should talk to the Israelis. You should sit with the Israelis. You cannot actually achieve anything by gun, by resistance. You have to forget about this. Talk to the Israelis, accept international legality, accept UN Security Council resolutions, accept General Assembly resolution. You have to be modernized, you have to be sophisticated. To be honest, some of us believed this kind of advice from the West. We know that the West has got the upper hand, they have the power, they have the money, they have the technology, they have everything. So we thought maybe, okay, we try to return to resistance, which is a legitimate actually attitude by anybody. We thought that this actually talking to the Israeli, giving up 80% at least of our territories, of our historic Palestine, we thought talking to them, sitting with them, will actually give us at least 20% of our land. We accepted all United Nations resolutions. There are about 63 Security Council resolutions. We thought this way in particular will give us a piece of our territories where we can establish our land. When we talk about the media, most of the media, if not all of the media, actually were siding with the Israelis and consider us as a terrorist, simply because we are resisting the occupation. We are under occupation, so we tried. So they thought that we are actually terrorists. So imagine you in this country, when you fought Nazism and you suffered under occupation of the Nazi. And imagine that if I call your heroes who resisted the Nazi as a terrorist. Imagine that. And you really gave a lot of sacrifices in order to get rid of this occupation, or at least to have independent state. We on the other side, yes, we were accused of being terrorists. And the problem is the media on the Western world actually copied this Israeli terminology and used it against us. So any Palestinian who resists the occupation is considered as a terrorist by peaceful means or by armed means. So this is another thing. So anyway, we believed the international community. We indulged in Oslo negotiation for months until we reached an accord between the Palestinian and the Israeli, hoping that by giving the Israeli peace, giving them the security, giving them everything, we, as I said, we will have our state. We accepted the two-state solution, hoping that the two-state solution will actually solve the problem of the whole of the Middle East. They told us land for peace. Yeah, if you want peace, you must actually give up land. So the people who were negotiating in our behalf, the PLO actually gave the Israeli the land, hoping that to gain peace. It is 25 years, a quarter of a century, since we started this process of negotiation with the Israeli. 25 years. We were willing, or the Palestinians were willing actually, to accept Israel, to normalize relation with Israel. And on the top of that, have you ever had that an organization, opposition organization, freedom fighter organization, giving security to the Israeli? Have you ever seen, have you ever imagined, for example, the Czech revolutionary going to work as a police for the Nazi, for example? Have you ever believed? The Palestinians did it, actually. We have security forces, about 40,000 security forces working for the Israeli security, actually confronting any rebels, any fighters, any actually resistance who would like to resist the Israeli, or to resist the occupation. For the last 25 years, 40,000 Palestinian police working for the Israelis. And what we gained after all this, after 25 years of negotiation, after 25 years of this Palestinian Authority working for the occupier, working for the settlers, to protect the settlers who are settling in our territories, so in our land, in our grandparents, grandfathers' land. This is how it is. When we talk about the media, actually, when we were resisting the occupation and being accused as a terrorist, there was a huge interest in the Western media about our case. So not because they are sympathetic with us, no, but because they actually they are caring about the Israeli, because they are worried about the Israeli, not worried about the Palestinian. So this is the dilemma which we are facing, and we know Western media actually in control of the whole world. For example, if you look at the wires, the agencies, for example, Reuters, Agence France Presse, DBA, all look at the television stations, CNN, CNBC, NBC, all the C's, all these stations are actually Western stations, and they are in full control of the the public opinion or the Western medias, and so we are on the other side of the equation. So to say that the media is sympathetic with the Palestinian, I believe it is a huge myth. For example, if you look at the representative of the Western media on Palestine, in Jerusalem, for example, even in the Middle East, you will find most of them actually sympathetic to the Israelis, or maybe they are actually, from Jewish roots. So they are very sympathetic. And can you imagine, for example, the New York Times bureau chief in Beirut is ex-Hezbollah fighter, for example, or ex-Hezbollah sympathizers. So this is the realities in our part of the world. So, but we presume that, okay, we're hoping as journalists, as media people, that we can change this equation. We can actually change and try to find ourselves a place in order to explain our misery under the occupation. So this is how things is working. The Israelis are very advanced, I admit. They have, as I said, the American and the British, the French, European backing them. And imagine if you are backed by United States, for example. Look at President Donald Trump now and what he is saying, for example. Well, he is supporting the Israeli. He came out with the century, the deal of the century. Who actually put the deal of the century? Who put the guideline of the peace or the deal of the century? It is Jared Kushner, who is a closest friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, and Jason Greenblatt, who is another a Zionist, in American Zionist. So those people are actually who are trying to put a roadmap for the settlement or for the solution for the Arab-Israeli conflict. This is the problem we are facing. And they are saying that, the Western media is sympathetic to the Palestinian. Where is this sympathy, for example? About 160 Palestinian unarmed protester on the other side of the border in Gaza. 160 people were killed by the Israeli snipers. Where is the international media? 160. 3,000 or 4,000 people were injured. The Israeli snipers use actually to shoot to kill. And if they don't kill, actually, and they used a certain ammunition which actually fragment the bones of the victims. We have 3,000 or 2,000, at least from 2,000 to 3,000 Palestinians lost their limb, lost their legs. And imagine those people. What do you expect from people in Gaza? I was born in a refugee camp in Gaza. And I know the situation. When people talk about Gaza Strip, they thought they are talking about a superpower or a huge place with jungles, with the mountains. Gaza is 150 square kilometers. 150 square kilometers. There are 2 million people squeezed in this strip of land. 2 million. And those people are actually originally, 85% of them, refugees, kicked out from the Palestinian city and villages on the coast of Palestine. So all of them from refugee, from originated from so-called Israel now. So what do you expect from those people? They are under sanction. They are under harsh, brutal sanctions for the last 100 years. You know, they cannot leave. The Israeli actually suffocated them completely. And they are in control of every loaf of bread which enter Gaza Strip. So even the Israeli in one stage, actually they used to count the calories, to send a ration of foods, the amount of food which actually keep those people only surviving, not prosperous or not. Honestly, and this is Israeli documents, they used to count the calories. How many the man needs, for example, 2,500 calories, the woman 2,200 calories, and so on. No hospitals. No actually water, no electricity, nothing at all, and the Israeli controlling their life, and they cannot move freely. There is no port to leave, there is no airport, nothing at all. So the Israeli actually put pressure on Egypt at the same time, not to let those people live freely like everybody else on earth. So where is the Western media? If there is 160 people, unarmed, actually protesters, demonstrating on the other side of the border, where there is a barrier, and electrical one, and there is also, so how, and they just screaming and shouting. Imagine that, people, unarmed people, peaceful people, only shouting and screaming and using kites. Imagine using kites. Not actually guns, not records, nothing. Just in peaceful way. And despite that, 160 of them were killed, were massacred. And as I said, 3,000 injured. And most of this injury is fatal. And they can't find hospital. They can't find medicine actually to be treated. And if they want to be treated, they are not allowed to go and for treatment. This is the situation. When we talk about, they don't care. As long as the victims are Palestinian, nobody is caring. If the victim is Israelis, okay, in this case, yes, yeah, the Western media will be there. When some radical Palestinian turn to, armed struggle, when they turn to suicide bomber, for example, oh, poor Israelis, they are killed by the Palestinians. Poor Israelis, they cannot go to pizza, restaurants in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv simply because maybe a suicider will come and blow himself among them. So yes, the media will be there, the CNN will be there, the NBC will be there, and Gaza again, was actually bombed more than, there was Israeli attacks on Gaza 3 times. And for the last 8 years, 3 times. And, the Israeli, they have F-15, F-16, they have all kinds. They have the Merkava tanks, they have all weapons, and invading Gaza and actually trying to crush any kind of resistance in that part of the world. So what do you expect that? Well, the Israeli movement will say, oh yeah, they are terrorists, they are fighting their occupation, they are fighting us, they want to kill us, they throw missiles against us. What kind of missiles is this? How many Israeli were killed by the by the Hamas missiles, for example? Well, 5, 10. But how many Palestinians were killed because of this invasion, because of this attacks by the Israeli? Thousands of Palestinians. And until now, there are 75,000 houses destroyed in Gaza. And despite that, and until now, despite the international community, promised to give about $5 billion to rebuild these houses, no single house was built in Gaza. No single house which were destroyed by the Israeli is actually rebuilt again. So this is another thing which is I would like to talk to. The Israeli, because they have the money, they have the expertise, and they have the West support, they established something called Ministry of Strategic Affairs. What's the Ministry of Strategic Affairs job? It is to propagate for the Israelis and to actually silence anybody who is criticizing the Israeli occupation. And according to the records, actually, they budgeted more than $800 million in order to actually finance this Hezbollah. You know, they are everywhere in Europe, and they are monitoring the media. For example, The Guardian was actually one of the critical of the Israeli occupation and used to actually commission people like me in order to write articles to explain what is happening in the Arab world. There are also, so they established the Guardian Watch. And BBC, for example, sometimes in order to have a balanced point of view, they have to invite Palestinians like me or Arabs in order to talk about the conflict. And they used to invite people like me in order to, and also with the Israelis. So it's never been alone, for example. You have to have Israeli counterpart wherever you appear in the media there. And despite that, there was a BBC Watch. I was told by BBC producers, for example, whenever I appear on the BBC, you know, hundreds, maybe thousands of emails bombarding the BBC. How do you actually bring in this Palestinian who is radical, or who is actually, he wants to destroy the state of Israel? I want to destroy the state of Israel. Imagine that. I am living in London for the last 40 years. How can I actually? Do I have a nuclear bomb, for example, in my house in London? I can throw to the Israeli or in Israel and blow it up and destroy it completely? Where is the freedom of expression, for example? I went to the West, you know, running away from the oppression of Arab regimes, hoping that I will find a platform in order to talk. So this is the situation on that. And even in the beginning, yes, we were actually talking, expressing our point of view, our grievances, explaining our people under the occupation, their suffering. But suddenly, when the Israeli realized that there is some change, some sympathy toward the Palestinian on the Western world, they started this Hezbollah. Wherever, and they fabricated many things, actually, in order to, tarnish our images. Personally, I suffered from this. Wherever they fabricated something that there is a row in LSE, London University, and somebody, and Abdel Atwan was investigated by the police simply because, there he talks about anti-Semitism and things. I never been investigated by the police. I never been called by the police. Never been a problem in my lecture on LSE or any other places. But, usually there are some people to make some noise and then pretend that somebody go to the police, say there was some sort of a fight or something. Nothing at all like this. It is actually fabrication. And once I was joking on television, saying that, okay, if the Israel bomb Iran and if the Iranian retaliate, I will celebrate, for example, with, because never happened. It will never happen. Immediately, this argument was twisted, and saying that Abdel Atwan would like the Iranian to bomb Israel with nuclear missiles. But Israel has, in Iran until now, it doesn't have a nuclear missile. It doesn't have a nuclear warheads. Who's the one who is getting the nuclear? It is the Israeli. So it is fabrication, and they put it in my Wikipedia, for example, and saying, look at him, that's what he said. So anybody who would like to invite me to a lecture, those talks, they will find it in the Wikipedia saying Bari Atwan will like the Iranian to bomb Israeli with a nuclear bomb. So where is the nuclear bomb? Where is the Iranian nuclear bomb? This is 10 years ago. So imagine that, it is there. And not me, not only me. Look, for example, at Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party leader in London, so in Britain. He's a highly respectable person, and he was anti-war. Yes, he was anti-Iraq war, he was anti-Syrian war, he was anti-Israeli war. So this is his record. Imagine they digged his past. That the media, the Israeli media, and the Western media, and the British media, they think, oh, he is anti-Semitism. Now, in the past, they used to say, look, listen, you cannot actually talk about the Jews. You cannot actually criticize the Jews. This is anti-Semitism. Okay, so okay, that's fine. We wouldn't criticize the Jews. we will criticize the Israeli. Now, if you criticize the Israeli, if you criticize the Israeli bombing of your lands, of your people, you are anti-Semitism. You are not allowed to touch the Israeli at all. Okay, in the past there was Jews and there was Israeli. But now, the question is completely different. After the Israeli law, which actually national law, which makes Israel actually, Israel as a Jewish state. You have to accept Israel as a Jewish state. There is no other place, there is no a place for any other Palestinian. We have at least 1.5 million Palestinians living in Israel since 1948. They stayed there. They did not actually flee their lands in 1948. But those are Arabs, the Christian and Muslims. So if Israel is a Jewish state, this is the worst type of apartheid. What they can do now? They can anytime. These radical Israelis say to them, look, you are not Israeli. This land is for the Israeli only. You are not allowed to stay here. What shall we do? Where is the international community? When the apartheid was practiced in South Africa, the whole of the international media, the whole of the Western world, were against it. So what about this? Why we cannot see a single word about this Israeli apartheid, which is practiced against us, against the Palestinians? This is actually the problem. That you heard of Mr. Hill, Mark Hill, the CNN man. He is, because he actually mentioned the Palestinian rights, and because he supported the Palestinian rights, he was kicked out of CNN, completely suspended. So you are not allowed to be sympathetic. Jeremy Corbyn suffered, humiliated the leader of the Labour Party in Britain. Humiliated. They're digging his file. Now, any MPs, Palestinian, Arab, Muslim MPs, Pakistani, Indian, even when he was a student in university, if he supported the Palestinian right, immediately he will be actually demonized, dehumanized, delegitimized, and under a huge campaign in order to prevent him from pursuing his job. I wouldn't, talk longer. I just would like to conclude. I was a regular speaker and commentator on the British media, American media. So, and suddenly the Israeli realized that maybe I am a dangerous voice, so I should be silenced. Now nobody ring me. Simply because of that campaign, because the Hespera. Nobody invited me to talk about our cause. Once I was called by Radio 2 in Britain, which is a very, very famous radio show. And I was actually called to talk about Al-Qaeda, about Osama bin Laden, who I interviewed in Tora Bora. And suddenly I found, an Israeli colleague who is actually in the program. I said to the presenter or the producer, but I'm talking about Al-Qaeda. I'm not talking about Palestine. Why there is an Israeli counterpart? So they said, no, he must be there. He should actually, the panel should be balanced. Okay, but this is not, I'm not talking about the Israeli. We are talking about Osama bin Laden, his death, and I interviewed him. Okay, bring an American, bring anybody else, but why Israeli? Because Abdel Atwan is there on the panel. And also there is a new thing. In the past, we used to call the Israeli, we used to boycott any panel or any lecture where the Israeli is actually. Okay, we said, la, we have to be there, we have to talk, we have to express our point of view. Now, for example, the Israeli officials in the Israeli embassy, they don't appear with us. They said, no, either if there is an interview, it should be separate. We can't have actually a dialogue with people like Abdel Atwan. So it's really, really, really difficult time to be a journalist now, whether a Palestinian or Arab talking about it. When, for example, the Israeli press attaché in London, I'll tell you, and I got the Jewish Chronicle, which interviewed him. You know what he said? He said, I did my best, this was about 10 years ago, to actually influence The Guardian but I failed. I tried to influence and change the attitudes of Channel 4 in Britain television station, and I failed. But you know, my biggest achievement, imagine that, this person is a press attaché of a country which saying it is the only democratic state in the Middle East. Look what he said. He said, my biggest achievement is to curtail down, to prevent Abdel Bari Atwan, or Bari Atwan as they call me in London. We managed actually to reduce to the minimum his appearing on the Western or British mainstream television stations and radio stations. Imagine, he is proud, he actually managed to prevent me from talking on the media, on the British media. So this is his biggest achievement, because he was leaving to Venezuela at that time. So this is the achievement he did. Lastly, in less than 1 minute, I would like to say that hopefully, you know, with the social media coming, the map will change. Hopefully, the Western, or the media map actually will change. Now, the people that can turn to the Western, to the social media, for the time being, I don't know what will happen in 5 years' time or 3 years' time. Maybe, you know, there will be change. But until now, yes, young people in university, Jewish people, Jewish students in university, with the social media actually, they have their own outlet and they can express their point of view. And also, other, you know, people from the Western world, young people like you here, or most of you, actually will have the platform and try to solve the problem. Thank you very much, and I hope, you know, I was respecting the time of this lecture. Lovely to see you.
You were. Thank you very much. And it seems, Abdel Bari, that you appeared in the island of freedom of speech in Europe now, in Prague. You can say whatever here. But of course, we can expect that Ben-Dror has something to say to you, because he took very carefully many notes during your speech. Ben-Dror, I would now probably ask you to continue with your 30 minutes, and then we can make a discussion for all of us. Maybe you will have some general questions for both the speakers. So please, if you can now... Can you... Well, no, I mean to have your 30 minutes. Is it okay? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me, Břetislav, the university. I have to admit that for many years I was a peace activist, and I'm still. And when I'm saying a peace activist, I'm looking for a solution. I want the Palestinians to have their own state. I want the Palestinians to live in respect. I want them to prosper. And years ago, I went on the way to Tunisia to meet Yasser Arafat, the leader of the Palestinians, before the Oslo agreements, in order to understand, in order to promote peace, in order to know much better about the problems, also from the Palestinian point of view. And I went on. I did not give up. I never gave up on achieving peace. And just 2 weeks ago, I met this person. Some of you maybe recognize him, Saeb Arikat, one of the Palestinian leaders in Ramallah. And I have to tell you that something happened. Something happened because as more I met Palestinians, as more I was exposed to the Western media and to the academia that Mr. Atwan spoke about, I understood the part of the problem is that so many people are manipulated about the Middle East. So many people don't understand the problems of the Middle East. So many people are exposed to so many lies. And when people are addicted to lies, peace cannot be achieved. So in this Western media that Atwan spoke about, I read an article claiming that gas chambers, I'm just giving you some example in order to understand what I'm talking about. Gas chambers are not the only way to destroy a nation. It's enough to develop high rates of infant mortality, which means that we Israelis, as it was described now, we are behaving to the Palestinians like Nazis. Wow. And I ask myself, this is what we do, the Israelis? And this is the impression that you could receive from Atwan? I checked the facts. I checked the fact because we heard here so many cliches that have no connection to reality. Zero. Let's go on. When I checked, I found out that actually infant mortality, not according to me, not according to the Zionist propaganda, according to the World Bank, infant mortality among Palestinians reduced dramatically. But lies prevail, unfortunately. Or this Western media that is so pro-Israeli, published in so many channels that Gaza village flooded as Israel opens dam gates. Wow, you see how we torture the Palestinians, how terrible we are, the Israelis. There is only one problem, there is not any dam in Israel. They publish blatant lies. And it's going on and on and on. This Western academia, here is Joseph Masad, writing about truths, facts, and facts on the ground. I guess he could give the same speech like Atwan. And according to him, Tel Aviv is the only Western city that does not have any Arab or Muslim inhabitants. Wow. What a terrible Israel, what a terrible Tel Aviv. Okay, let me tell you, I live in Tel Aviv. My doctor is an Arab. My lawyer, I'm a lawyer myself, not now, now I'm a researcher, I'm a journalist. What he's talking about? What he's talking about? He has no idea what he's talking, and he is a professor in Ivy League University that is teaching about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Full of lies. And it's going on and on. He claimed against Netanyahu that Netanyahu in a UN General Assembly conference said that he is going to expel the Israeli Arabs. We heard it here too. They are going to be expelled. Wow, they have no rights. We will get to it. The only one sentence that Netanyahu said in his conference was that Israel will always keep their rights. How could he conclude from what Netanyahu said that Netanyahu is going to expel them? I have no idea. But this is how manipulation is working. Because the students of this professor did not go to the original lecture of Netanyahu. And let me tell you a secret. It's not a secret. I'm not a big supporter of Netanyahu. Not at all. I live in a free country. I can say whatever I want. In favor of him, but mainly against him. And it's going on and on. Here is a professor, the president of MESA. Wow, they are so pro-Israelis, all those professors and journalists. The president of MESA. MESA is Middle East Studies Association. And he claims that according to the 9/11 Commission, they conceived it, the perpetrators, because of what Israel did in Jenin. You know, massacre in Jenin, and so on. There are 3 lies in one sentence of the president of MESA. First of all, it was never, but never written in the report. You will immediately understand why. Second, there was not any massacre, there was nothing in Jenin, there was a battle. And the third lie, the story of Jenin, the battle of Jenin, was after the 9/11. 3 lies in one paragraph, and this is the pro-Israeli media and academia that we just heard about. And it's going on and on and on. Aya Tamimi, I don't know if here in the Czech Republic you heard about it, but she became the poster girl of the Palestinians. She's demonstrating everywhere. All the TV teams that are coming to Israel, they take her just in order to put her in a picture. And you know what? Again and again, since when she was 6 years old. It's a show. A show. It's called Pallywood, Palestinian Hollywood. again and again and again. She's good. She's good. She looks good. She looks European, you know. This racist attitude, they prefer this kind of look in order to show, you see, she's one of us. And she is awarded, by the way, in many places. You can see her here. You can see her with Erdogan, the president of Turkey. Wow, what a poor girl. Demonstrating, being a star of all the TV channels in the world, and awarded all over the world. Miserable. But the main point, and it was mentioned here, and it's more important to say it, refugees and Nakba. Zionists came and forced out the Arabs. Let me tell you something. I have my own personal story too. First of all, what academics, they are so pro-Israelis that they are saying, and this is the leading idea among them, that the Nakba is one of the great crimes of modern history. Everybody knows what is a Nakba? Okay, Nakba is a Palestinian catastrophe because of what happened in 48. And in order to understand what happened in 48, yes, Arabs were forced out. Yes, it happened. It happened, but in order to understand what happened, we have to zoom out a little. And when we zoom out, we have all to remember that we had empires in that time, more than 100 years ago. We had empires. And there were a lot of national movements in order to liberate themselves. National movements. No more empires. No more tyranny. We don't want it anymore. We want independence. And at the end of the First World War, the idea of self-determination was accepted. The 14 points of Wilson. And the outcome was that many nation-states were created. No more empires. Anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, nation-states. It's good, it's bad, it's not the point right now. But that's what happened. And in the process of dismantling the empires and establishing nation-states, a lot of people, millions, were forced to move out of their homelands. Turkey and Greece. About 2 million people. And it's going on and on and on and on. Only in the Balkans, we are speaking about 7 million people who were forced out of their homelands in order to implement self-determination. And it's going Poland, Ukraine, and so on and so on. And India, Pakistan, Cyprus, German ethnics who were forced out also from what was Czechoslovakia in that time, from the Sudetenland, 3 million people. And it's going on and on and on and on. In that time, we have to bear in mind that it was the norm. This person, for example, Fridtjof Nansen, received the Nobel Prize for Peace because he initiated and conducted the population exchange between Turkey and Greece. We have to understand the norms of the time. Even the Permanent Court of International Justice recommended upon to carry out population exchange because this is a way to achieve peace. Even Arab leaders in Palestine, by the way, I'm saying Arab leaders and I'm not saying Palestinians because in that time, until 48, they were not Palestinians. They were Arabs who lived under the Palestinian, under the British mandate. My parents who grew up in Palestine, and I will get to it, they were Palestinians. The Arabs in Palestine did not even call themselves in that time Palestinians. It came much later. I respect the right. I don't want to be misunderstood. But in that time, it only the Jews, or mainly the Jews, who called themselves Palestinians. But even Arab leaders from that time accepted the idea of population exchange because it was a norm of the time. And it's going on and on. The Peel Commission in 1937 recommended upon a population exchange. And Nouri al-Said, the Prime Minister of Iraq, and so on and so on. Winston Churchill, at the end of the Second World War, declared in the British Parliament, expulsion is the method which will be the most satisfactory and lasting, and so on and so on. I must make it clear that today it's a crime against humanity. I'm not recommending it. I'm saying what was the norm of that time. That's what I'm saying. I want to be clear. Now, only in Europe, only after the Second World War, we are speaking about more than 20 million people who were forced out of their homelands. Nakba, German Nakba, Polish Nakba, Ukrainian Nakba, everyone had a Nakba. And let me tell you something. In order to understand the atmosphere of what was in Palestine in that time, under the British mandate, we must remember that the leader of the Arabs of Palestine, the most important one, was Haj Amin al-Husseini, who collaborated with Hitler. It's part of history. We cannot ignore it. We were afraid. We, the Jews, were afraid. Because he escaped immediately after the Second World. He was supposed to be judged, indicted in Nuremberg, just like all the others. He escaped. And he kept on. Our fundamental, that's what he declared, our fundamental condition for cooperating with Germany, with the Nazi Germany, of course, was a free hand to eradicate every last Jew from Palestine and the Arab world. I want you to understand the atmosphere of my parents, not of mine because I was not born yet. They are planning a new Holocaust. And it was frightening. And every Arab leader in that time declared it's going to be a war of extermination. Again and again and again and again. And a draft law was prepared about the Jews from Arab countries. And they suffered, Jews from Arab, I'm not speaking now about Europe, I'm speaking only about the Arab countries. They were persecuted, massacres against them, totally forgotten. A place after place, a place after place. And let me tell you something. I heard that Jews arrived from Europe, rich Jews. No, they were not, they were refugees, not rich people. They were persecuted, so they had to leave to find a shelter. Yes, they went to Zion because this was the Jewish dream for thousands of years. The whole idea was self-determination, just like all the other people. That's all. My grandmother, 100 years ago, at the end of the Second World War, she was persecuted in Yemen, the whole family. They were forced out. Not in 48, in 1918. Exactly 100 years ago. And now I hear that they were rich people who came to conquer the land. What a difference between the reality of Jews who were persecuted all over, not only in Europe, also in Arab countries. And what we heard here, well, rich people, I never knew that my grandmother was a rich woman. She had to escape. And she did. She was persecuted by Muslims in the Arab world. It was a reality. Now, yes, what happened, by the way, when they came to Israel, they lived like refugees. Like refugees. Altogether, we are speaking about more than 700,000 Arabs, Palestinians, who became refugees. Yes, it happened. But more than 850,000 of Jews, only from Arab countries. I'm not speaking about the Jews from Europe. If we speak about personal stories, the father of my wife, he was born here in the Czech Republic, in the Sudetenland. He was forced out when the Nazis invaded. Now I hear that we are the Nazis. He was forced out because the family escaped. They escaped from here to Egypt, Alexandria. They became refugees. But then they became refugees again in 1956 because Egypt forced out all the Jews without any property. All the property was confiscated. He became a refugee again. We have to understand history. We have to understand the real facts on the ground. And it's going on and on. Yes, they came to Israel and they became refugees for years. And you know what is the difference between them? There's so many refugees who came from Arab countries to the Palestinians who became refugees. In no time, they became citizens of the land. Palestinians were perpetuated in their situation as refugees because of political reasons. That's the difference. Altogether, we are speaking about more than 52 million people who were forced out of their homelands. I'm speaking about that time. How many are refugees now? 0. 0, because it's over. We cannot dig in history all the time. Oh, how poor we are, how victims we are. The point is that there is only one community that is perpetuating the status of refugees. Palestinians. They suffer. Don't misunderstand me, they suffer. Many of them, but not because of Israel. Because of political reasons of the Arab leaders. Because of their own leaders who refused to any kind of settlement. And it's going on and on and on and on. One of the reasons that the problem is perpetuated is that the UN established 2 agencies. UNHCR, which is known, dealing with all the refugees of the world. 5 days later, UNRWA was founded. 5 days later. Why? Why don't you have, why the UNHCR is not enough for you? No, we need our own organization in order to perpetuate the problem. And the problem is perpetuated, but not because of Israel. Because this is what, this is the outcome of the Arab pressure to have a separate organization. By the way, not only UNRWA, most people don't know, but there was also UNCRA. What is UNCRA? The same, but for Korea, because there were millions of refugees also in the Korea War. It's over. It worked from 91 to 99, 51 to 59, and it's over. The problem was solved and not perpetuated. And it's going on and on and on and on. I don't have time to go to all of it. People speak about the UN resolutions, and Palestinians always speak about the right of return according to 194. No, there are many other resolutions of a higher level. Totally ignored by the Arab world to integrate the refugees in the hosting countries. Totally ignored. And it's going on and on and on. Right of return. No, there is not right of return. Even the European Court for Human Rights decided upon. And it's going on and on. And then we get to the occupation. Occupation, which means what happened in 1967. 6 days war. And so many times I hear in this kind of forums, in universities, in the so-pro-Israeli academia in media, that Israel had this kind of expansion inspirations. No, it's another lie. It's a lie because from 1964, even before, but I'm giving the years before the war, the Arab League decided upon extermination. Every Arab leader in that time declared extermination. Before occupation, there was not any occupation. Jamal Abdel Nasser, extermination. And so on and so on. The leader of the Palestinians, of the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, declared 3 days before the war began 3 days. Whoever, they were sure that they are coming to defeat Israel. And we were sure, by the way, I was a kid in that time. I remember myself digging in the land because we didn't have shelters. It was the atmosphere of the time. And he declared, and we all knew it, whoever survives will stay in Palestine, whoever survives from the Jews, of course. But in my opinion, no one will remain alive. Just to understand the atmosphere of the time. And then people speak about life under occupation, like, and we heard something here, like if we behave like the Nazis, wow. And I spoke with you already about the infant mortality, blood libel. But even if you make a global comparison, you find out the Palestinians are much better than the global average. They are even better than Turkey. The same about life expectancy. Palestinians are doing much better because of Israel. Just something to bear in mind. In '67, life expectancy among Palestinians was 48.6. Now they are about 74, 75. It's because of the Nazi regime of Israel. I mean, what people are talking about? You can be against the occupation, fair enough. I'm also against. But you don't have to lie about what happened. You just don't have to lie. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. Education, you know, this kind of BDS movement that are coming and saying Israel destroyed the higher education. Here is the data only, but only according to the Palestinians. In '67, they did not have one university. Not even one. Right now, they have more than 40 high education institutions. And right now, they have the highest rate, per capita rate of university graduates. I'm not trying to say that occupation is good. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that so many people are lying again and again about the occupation, which I'm against. Don't misunderstand me. Now, one question that we all have to bear in mind. Between 48 and '67, there was not any occupation. There was not. West Bank and Gaza Strip were not under the Israeli rule. How comes that they did not establish a state? If Atwan is complaining so much about how comes that we do not let them have a state on 20%, why did not you establish it when it was not under the Israeli rule? Why? I'll tell you why. Because they never wanted a Palestinian state. Unfortunately, I am supporting a Palestinian state. I support any peace agreement. But it was refused again and again by Arab leaders, by the Palestinians. But they had it, and they did not want to establish a state. No occupation. No occupation. But Israel, of course, is to blame again and again. And then is coming the lie of genocide, which is a terrible, we don't have to go to all the details, and you can see so many people in the Western media speaking about, whoa, what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, it's a kind of genocide. I will skip because we don't have time. My time is very limited. Here is the Western pro-Israeli media. You can see one by one how much pro-Israelis they are. They describe Israel as a Nazi state, which is of course a lie. And then I hear here that, oh, they are pro-Israelis. They are controlled by the Zionists, by the Israelis, by the Jews. And it's going on and on. For example, Claire Short, she was a minister in the British government. She published an article saying, the oppression of the Palestinian people is the major cause of violence in the world. Wow. She even blamed Israel in the global warming. What is the connection between Israel and the global warming? I have no idea. But when people are, and here is what people are saying, it is just from some weeks ago in American universities. They compare between Netanyahu and Hitler. Genocide. What is genocide? So let me tell you something about genocide. But before that, the pro-Israeli media, the outcome of it is that, according to so many people in the world, Israel has the most negative influence in the world. I mean, if we control the media, how comes that so many people think that Israel is the main problem of the world? Before that, by the way, before that, it has been said about Jews. Now they say it about Israel. Same patterns of propaganda, same pattern of anti-Semitism. It's not criticism. To criticize is legitimate. To demonize is not legitimate. And it's going on and on. When you go country after country, you understand how much the media is pro-Israeli. I mean, now the facts, the real facts. What happened about the genocide? 86 million people were killed since the foundation of Israel up to now. Among them, 12 million Muslims were killed. Among them, in the Israeli-Arab, all the wars together, between 80 to 120,000 people, which I'm not proud about. And in the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, it was between 11 to 12,000. Again, I'm not proud about one of them, but I want to put things in proportions. The contribution of Israel to violence in the world is something like 0.0006, which means nothing. But who cares about the so many millions that are killed by Muslims, which I mean Arab and Muslims who are killing Arab and Muslims? You will not see demonstrations, not in Copenhagen, and not in Brussels, and not in London, and not in San Francisco, because if they kill each other, it's okay. It's a tragedy for them, by the way. It's a tragedy because the world is ignoring them. There's so many people that are killed, by the way, mainly in the last 20 years, by the global jihad. Hamas is part of the global jihad. And they kill their own fellow Muslims, again and again, in so many places. We don't have time, so I know that I have just one word about the peace process. We heard here. Again and again, Israel accepted the two-state solution. Again and again. It was rejected by the Palestinians in 1947, the UN partition resolution. It was rejected by all the Arab world. But I'm speaking about 2000. Clinton, with his proposal, peace proposal, 2 states for 2 peoples, solution for the refugees, and so on. In that time, his close friend was Bandar Ben Sultan, the ambassador of Saudi Arabia, who convinced the Arab leaders to accept the 2 states for 2 people solution, to accept. And he met Yasser Arafat just before Arafat went to deliver his response. And he told him one sentence: if we lose this opportunity, it is not going to be a tragedy. This is going to be a crime. Arafat went to the White House and committed both, a tragedy and a crime. I know that I don't have time. I just want to say something about Gaza Strip. Again and again, Hamas was offered to lift the closure. Just accept not the Israeli precondition, but the European, the international community, quartet precondition. They rejected. They have millions of dollars. Do you know what? I mean, we heard here that they don't build houses. You know why they do not build houses? I'll tell you why. Because they put all the money in tunnels of death. For that, they have a lot of money. But for their own people, they don't have money. Each tunnel costs millions of dollars. But they don't care about their people. And it's going on and on and on and on and on. We don't have time. I'm sorry. Here are the peaceful demonstrators. Here they are. Here they are. I don't have time to show you all the videos where the Hamas is declaring, we are supporting in killing not only the Jews, the Christians, and the communists. I don't know why communists, to the last one of them. This is what they broadcast. Just last one, because we heard about Israel and how Israel is oppressing the Arab citizens. This is the last, this is the last one. Here is the president, the ex-president of Israel, Moshe Katsav. He was sentenced to 7 years in jail because of rape. I'm not proud about it. I'm not. I'm mentioning it because he had 3 judges. The presiding judge was an Israeli Arab. You know what? In Israel it was a non-issue. Nobody cared about it. So what? I mean, it's so natural that an Arab will be, because we have an Arab in the Supreme Court too. But according to Atwan, it looks like if we are an apartheid state. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben-Dror. It was also excellent presentation. It would be fair because you mentioned many times Mr. Atwan, so I would maybe give him really just few minutes, just few notes to react, and then there will be opportunity for your questions. Okay, you will be the first. So first, Mr. Atwan.
Thank you, Břetislav. Originally, the program, said that Mr. Ben-Dror will be second and I will be first. And suddenly I was downgraded from the first class to the economy class. So I have to be the second to speak, the first to speak, so he could actually raise all these kind of reference to what I have said. Anyway, being in the economy class is not bad anyway. So he referred several times to, yes, that Israeli were refugees. They came to Palestine as refugees. The Jews came to Palestine as refugees. Yes, and you know what? Honestly, my grandparents used to say to me, we really welcome them. We really understand them. We really take care of them. We consider them a human being like us, and they are running away from persecution. So in the beginning, yes, we open our hearts, our houses, our land for the Israeli Jews, or for the Jews who are coming from Europe, running away from Hitler. So what was our reward? So imagine if, for example, the refugee, Syrian refugee in Germany turned against the German and kicked them out of Germany. Imagine if the refugee in Czech Republic, for example, turned against the Czech Republic people and kicked them out of Czech Republic. That's exactly what happened to us. This is one point. Referring to Hajj al-Husseini, Amin al-Husseini as collaborated with Hitler, but the Jews collaborated with Hitler, and it is documented. There are a lot of facts about this. Some of the Jews, I'm not saying all of them, were collaborating with Hitler. So you cannot use this argument against us simply because there is one man who is a radical. Now there are a lot of radical Israeli would like to they would like to smash the Palestinian. There are rabbis who are actually giving the green lights for the Israeli generals to kill, to rape the Palestinian women simply because they are Palestinian. We are not talking about these things, but this is the problem which we are facing. Talking about the Arabs persecuted Jews, it is amazing to hear that. When the Iraqi actually fled Iraq, in Iraq before 1950s, there were 3 Jewish ministers in the Iraqi cabinet, 3 Jewish ministers. Not just 1 or 2, 3, and they represent less than 1% of the population. So we are not saying that everything was perfect. And anyway, when the Jews were persecuted, it wasn't the Arab Empire, it was the Ottoman Empire. So this is different thing. And the Iraqi Jews were forced to leave Iraq because the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, planted bombs on cinema in order to frighten them, to push them to immigrate. The same thing happened in Egypt. The Mossad intelligence service actually bombed the synagogues of Jews in Egypt in order to force them to go to Israel. This is fact. There are a Jewish community in Morocco. They are very prosperous. There is a Jewish community in several parts of the Arab world, and they are living there. And the Arabs, actually, the Arab League issued a statement, a decree, a resolutions that all Jews, Arab Jews who would like to come back to the Arab countries, they are welcome to come back. Even Gaddafi actually welcomed them. Talking about the two-state solution. Okay, in the end, we accepted the two-state solution. We wanted a state. We wanted to be human like anybody else. So what happened? After 25 years of negotiation, 25 years of negotiation with the Israelis, what happened? There are 800,000 Jewish settlers on the West Bank and Jerusalem. These the territories supposed to be the base of independent Palestinian state. Look at Abbas, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority. He was a man who advocating for peace all his life. And he was chosen by the Israeli, by the American, as replacement of Arafat, who was poisoned by the Israeli, according to certain theories. Anyway, look what happened to Abbas. He is isolated. He is depressed. He is actually staying in his office, literally doing nothing. So after 25 years of being convinced of peace and two-state solutions, nobody talked to him. Nobody. The Israeli said, no, he is not a peace partner. Who do you want as a peace partner? An Israeli to be a peace partner to another Israeli, for example? So even Abbas, who is actually a dove, is not accepted. Look, what is happening now? No state solution. No two-state solution. No, actually, any even peace talks. Now, the Israelis are bombing now Gaza and bombing wherever they like, and building settlements on the Palestinian accounts, and talking about Ahd Tamim and other. What do you expect us to do? To throw the Israeli with roses who are killing us? What, we are not allowed to resist the occupation? But to accept, to dance with the occupiers, for example? So unbelievable. We have the right to resist this occupation. We have to the right to defend ourselves, to actually try to get our rights. Palestine was a Palestinian territory. Palestine was an Arab territory. It wasn't Jewish territories. The number of Jews represent less than 1% during the First World War. That's the equation. So I know they have the power. I know they have the money. I know they have the support of the American. I know they have the support of the Russian. But we will not give up. If there is no state solution, a two-state solution, we will advocate for one-state solution, where the Jews, the Christian, the Muslims, everybody will live together in equal footing. Exactly. The international community destroyed the apartheid system in South Africa. And we actually will continue calling for the international community to destroy the apartheid system in Israel. This is the only way. So we can live together. I personally advocate for living together in equal footing in a democratic, secular state. This is the only solution now. So we are not going to give up. This is we gave them the opportunity. We gave the peace. We actually gave the peace opportunity. We talked for 25 years, a quarter of a century, but enough is enough. Now, okay, we will do it peacefully. Hamas is a Palestinian organization. Yesterday, the Israeli presented a resolution to United Nations considering Hamas a terrorist organization. The the resolution failed completely. Hamas is fighting for the Palestinian right. Everybody, Palestinian, should fight for our rights. We want to be, in equal footing with the Jews in our own territories. What can we concede more than that? This is the question. What can we do after that? And how can we stop this killing of our people in our own land? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your brief reaction, and now it's really time to give an opportunity for your questions. So all of you, please wait always for a microphone because of recording. Thank you.
My name is Zdeněk Kümer. I'm from one of sections of Ministry of Defense. I have a question to Mr. Atwan. You repeatedly said that Palestinians accepted and are accepting all UN declarations, resolutions regarding Arab-Israeli conflict. I would like to say that you did it with one exception. You already had your own state within pre-67 borders with Jerusalem, but you refused it. The state was declared by United Nations in 1948. You had your own independent state, but you refused it. Instead, you start hitting and attacking Israel together with other Arab countries. You failed, but you kept attacking Israel for a couple of decades. Again, after some other decades, you realized your mistake and started to ask getting back what you already had, your independent state in pre-67 borders. And Jerusalem, you want back, of course. If I was a Jew, and I am not, I would be deeply suspicious about you. Wouldn't you start attacking me again after you get back what you already had and what you threw away in 1948? Is there a guarantee? If so, what guarantee it is that you will not start attacking me again? Thank you.
What you have said is absolutely correct. Yes, in the partition resolution actually wanted to establish, to divide Palestine. But if you look at the situation in that time, the Israeli, as it's a fact, they came from Europe to Palestine, and we were the owner of this land. So how can we give half of it, or more than half of it, to those actually refugees coming from all over the world just a few years ago? So is it justified? Is it just here in this case? So if you are in my place, for example, will you, okay, if your country open the border for refugees, and then refugees will grow up, will you accept to give half of your country to the refugees, for example? That's a big question. Will you accept it? You close your door in the front of refugees in this country or other countries and say, no, we don't want them anymore. So, because, you learn from the Israeli experience. They came as a refugee and then actually they took over. So maybe this is in your background. So let us be fair. Other thing. In 1948, how many Arab countries were existing at that time? 7 Arab countries. 7, actually. Most of the Arab countries were under the British mandate, and British and French mandate. And before that, we were part of Ottoman Empire. There was no Arab governments. Algeria was under occupation, Tunisia was under occupation. Most of it were French occupation, and so on. So how can we actually establish a state while, for example, most of the Arab governments, Arab territories were under Ottoman Empire before, and then British and French mandate after the Second World War. This is one. So this is actually hopefully answer the first part of your question. The second part, why we did not establish a state on West Bank and Gaza Why shall we establish a state in the West Bank and Gaza while we actually believe all of Palestine is ours? It is all of Palestine is ours. If we look at the population map in that time, you can see that clearly. So why shall we? And also in that time, we were in a shock, in a state of a shock. We were refugees. We are looking for foods to eat. I was living in a tent in that time. My family were living in a tent. We didn't have the choice to have a state or not state. And we believed we are Arabs, yes. So this is the question. But now to blame me, after the Israeli took all of Palestine, saying that because you did not accept a state in 1967, or because you did not accept the partition resolution of United Nations, so you deserve now what you are now in. No, this is absolutely unfair. Even if we rejected the state, okay, we make mistake, we rejected the state. We should have the right to have our dream and to establish a state. We don't want a state now. Most of the Palestinian people, if you ask them, they want one state, a state to coexist with the Jews in the same equal footing, without apartheid. What can you expect more than that? Okay, the Israeli, let them, they have the West Bank, they have the Gaza now. Let them declare as a state like South Africa, for example, now, because of Nelson Mandela. Let us live together in equal footing, without any discrimination. What can we concede more than that? Okay, they wanted to be one state, oh, we wanted one state. Let us live in equal footing and have the same rights and have democracy and live together. The Israeli, if you ask the Israeli this, oh no, we don't want one state solution. No. So what do you want? You don't want two-state solution. You don't want one-state solutions. What do you want? To kill us? To continue killing us? That's the question.
Please, you want something to add?
Yeah, just one thing. First, in 48, the Jews, many of them, including my parents, lived in tents. I mean, it was not a state like what you are speaking today about a state. That's one. Second, we are not speaking about the people who lived in tents. We are speaking about leadership. Leaders did not accept the idea of two states. The UN resolution, partition resolution, they did not accept it. Now, speaking about one state, it's very strange. I'm looking at the so many states in the Arab world collapsing, failed. I mean, how comes that somebody is suggesting me a one-state solution when I see what is happening in Libya, in Somalia, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen? I mean, they are about much less because of a small difference between the tribes. They are killing each other. And then you're telling me, let's do one state. You know what? I have an idea for you. My dear friend Atwan, I have an idea for you. When the Arab states will live in peace among themselves, among different populations, tribes, religions, then come with the offer of one state. You know what? I declare here publicly, when you will live in peace and you will not kill each other as the Hamas and Fatah are doing, and as in Somalia, as in Yemen, as in Libya, as in so many other places, then talk about it. And to remind you, here in Europe, Yugoslavia was dismantled to something like 7 entities. Czechoslovakia, 2 entities. USSR to so many others, because people wanted self-determination. You want to take from me the basic right of self-determination because of this one-state solution which is not working in the Middle East, which is not working anywhere? Thank you. I'm not accepting it.
So there was another question, please.
My question is to Mr. Bari Atwan. I doubt that your position reflects the official position of the Palestinian Authority. I think that it's not the one-state solution on the table, but the two-state solution, which is on the table now. And I think this is the official position of the Palestinian Authority. And in this respect, I would like to ask, why does not the Palestinian Authority declare its independence as a sovereign state? Because there are other examples today in the world that states can exist even if they are not widely recognized by the international community. And I am convinced if there would be an independent Palestinian state, and the appropriate government would invite other states to recognize it, that certainly would be a greater number of states that would recognize Palestine, certainly more than those who recognize South Ossetia, for instance, or Abkhazia in the proximity of Georgia. So my question is, what are the the class of politicians in Palestine, what are they waiting for?
Thank you very much for your, very, very articulate question. The Palestinians declared independent state several times. In 1988, in Algeria, they declared Palestine as independent state according to the advice of the Western world and some European countries. And we know that Yasser Arafat in that time said the Palestinian Charter is completely cancelled, and he used a French word, caduc, so non-existence. What happened? 126 countries on the world recognized the establishment of Palestinian independent state. In United Nations General Assembly, the same thing. More than 132 countries recognized Palestine as independent state. But on the ground, it doesn't mean anything, simply because the American is adopting the Israeli point of view. And it was, and still, the only superpower on our planet. This is the problem. Look at, are we going to, how can we, for example, declare independent state if the Israeli security forces can tomorrow arrest Mahmoud Abbas and throw him out of the Ramallah, his office from Ramallah and Jordan or anywhere? They have the power, and they have the support of the American government. So what can we do? Okay, this is apply if there is, honestly, there is a state on Palestine, or there is a self-rule even, but nothing at all. There is nothing at all. The Israeli, a small, and one police woman or man from the Israeli army, honestly, can kick Abbas out of the West Bank. Abbas cannot move. He is a president, a big president. He has a private jet and something like that. He is searched on border crossing. He cannot move. He cannot leave the West Bank without Israeli permission. This is the problem. This is one thing. Second thing, okay, you mentioned several states who nobody recognized them. I add to them Cyprus, for example, Turkish Cyprus. It is there for more than a quarter of a century. Who is recognizing Cyprus? It is, again, it is United States. It is actually the Israeli lobby. It is, the Western governments. How many Western governments recognize the state of Palestine until now? Nobody. No, France did not. Britain did not. Czech Republic did not. Germany did not.
Czech Republic, you have an embassy here.
We have embassy, but we don't have actually a recognition. It is not embassy of Palestine. It is a mission of Palestine. It is not. When there is a state, yes, it will be embassy. But there is no state. There is no embassy. That's the problem we are facing.
I think at the time when it was set up, it had an official status of an embassy.
I hope you are right. I hope, thank you very much. I thank you for believing on this. We need people to believe in that, to support the independent Palestinian state. I will be extremely thankful and grateful for that. I'm not just opposing you. I wish it does happen on the ground. I wish we can have a state, a proper state, and to be a proper citizen, like you, like everybody else. Thank you.
Just to make it clear, the official name of the Palestinian mission is the Embassy of the State of Palestine, of the Palestinian state. And if the current governments are asked about its recognition, they say it was recognized in 1988 by previous regime, therefore there is no need to recognize it once again. So this is how they slip away from the problem.
I apologize for my misunderstanding, so I'm very happy now.
Okay, so there was another question. by Hannah the second.
Thank you. First, a very quick note and then a question. Mr. Yemini, when talking about the one-state solution, when you say that there is so much complexities regarding Israeli-Palestinian history and you go back to decades and talk about it, it's maybe better when talking about Iraq or Yemen and other countries to include the complexities of those lands as well and think about those lands as well, that why today Iraqis or Yemenis or Libyans are having the conflicts that we see today. But since the program is about media, I would be very interested from both panelists. You mentioned about the opposite side always being invited to the programs which you are invited to. I'm not talking about when you had to talk about Osama bin Laden, but generally when you appear in the media, for us is always this question, if the other side should be included or if we have to only hear from one side of the story. What is your opinion? If you go on the programs, would you prefer to hear not a fake balance, but a balance to hear from the other side of the coin? Would you prefer to have the other side of the coin in the program or not?
Please also identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Hannah Kaviani. I'm a journalist here at RFRL.
For myself, I always prefer both sides. Sometimes, by the way, it's not even a debate, it's a kind of dialogue in order to reach an agreement. I mean, for myself, I'm not representing the government. I'm representing only my research and my work as a journalist. I'm dealing with foreign affairs. And I do present my views. I mean, now let's forget history, but let's talk about reality. And in the reality, I do support the two-state solution. In many times I have to say I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm pro-Palestinian because I want them to live in peace, prosperity, independence. I do want. I'm so sorry that this kind of industry of lies manipulates them with this kind of demand for right of return, for example. Nobody receives the right of return. And the main obstacle, and let's put it on the table, the main obstacle in the last 30 years was not settlements, which I'm against, by the way. I'm totally against. I'm not pro-government, I'm pro-peace. But the main problem was not the settlements, the main problem was the Palestinian demand for right of return. It's a kind of crazy. I mean, you're not going to accept the 3 million Germans and their, which is now 30 million people to the Czech Republic because of what happened after the Second World War. You are not. Nobody is going to do it. It never happened in it, but when they ask for it, and this is the main obstacle to peace, not settlements, when they ask for it, the meaning is we don't want peace. We want the extermination of the state of Israel. We call it right of return. So I want this kind of debates because one side you don't understand the bigger picture. I want people to understand the bigger picture. I want to strive for peace. And many Palestinians, by the way, are, in my opinion, which mean, yes, we need two states for two peoples, which mean a Palestinian state and a Jewish state, side by side, living in peace. That's what I'm supporting. But I don't want, just the same way that I'm against settlements and I don't want Jews to go to the other side, I don't want Palestinians to achieve the right of return or to implement, because the meaning is the destruction of Israel. Yes, I want to the self-determination. I want a dialogue. I want peace. And I'm looking many times not for debates. It's not, debates will lead us nowhere. What I'm looking for is partner for peace. We don't have to agree about everything, but we can promote ourselves and we can promote understanding in order to achieve what I think is the most sensible and reasonable solution: two states for two peoples. Yes, even with this solution we have problems, but it is on the table. It's not the most complicated conflict. We have always to bear it in. It's not the most complicated. We have a solution. And injustice, Atwan is completely right when he's speaking about what happened to the Palestinians. He is completely right. I'm with him as a human being, But I want him, in the very same way, to understand my side and about what happened to my family and to so many other families from the Middle East, from Europe. They suffered. They came because they had no choice. They were refugees. Yes, injustice was carried out from both sides. Let's forget the past. Let's proceed to achieve peace, 2 states for 2 peoples. And that's why I'm looking for partners all the time.
Yes, of course, I would love to have the other point of view. I never was against it. That's why I'm here. If I'm against the other point of view, if I'm against a debate, a proper debate, I wouldn't be here sitting with you. So, no, we would like to have this debate live and every side to express his point of view and let us people decide. But are we allowed? You know, for example, I'm telling you, I authored 4 books. You know, one of them about my memoirs. You know, the other 3 books, for example, were translated, or one of them at least, for 40 foreign languages. And I found publishers all over the world. So when it comes to my memoirs, my book about Palestine, about my experience as a refugee, it wasn't actually published by my publisher in the United States who published my books about Al-Qaeda, about Islamic States and others, simply because they are scared from being accused of anti-Semitism. But when it comes to Al-Qaeda, when it comes to Osama bin Laden, okay, Mr. Atwan is welcome. And I'll add one other thing about debates, for example. I am banned from entering United States. I don't believe, you know, the American would like to ban me. It is definitely the Israeli lobby. I am sure, I don't know, I asked the President of the United States to give me explanation why you declined me a visa. Why you did not give me a visa? I have a British passport. So simply because, you know, definitely the Hezbollah, definitely the Israeli lobby, they are behind that. We are not, until this moment, I paid the fees, everything, twice, and I never received an answer. This tells you how, you know, the Israeli lobby in control of the most of the media, even now the government, the Western government, or most of the Western government. This is the problem. Yes, I wanted debate. Yes, I wanted the other point of views. Now, they refuse to appear with me on television. They have several times happened. And said, no, we don't want to appear with Bari Atwan, simply because, you know, I don't know why. Until now, maybe they have other point of views. I can't go to ask the Israeli why you don't want to appear with me, for example, in television. It is their decision. It's not my decision. So this is the problem. I have been talking to you now. Am I a monster, for example? Am I saying, you know, a language belongs to the Stone Age, for example? So simply because, not me only, they want to silence any critic of Israel.
Do you consider somewhere Palestinians also? I mean, can you think about Palestinians going somewhere wrong to not to have the upper hand, or at least a balanced position with Israelis in the media? Because you talk about Hezbollah, you talk about the money and power, but this conflict is not a conflict of today or yesterday. We're talking about decades. Yeah. And in these decades, why Palestinians didn't manage to sort of have the same level of presence and having their narrative being told in the media as well? Was there something wrong with the Palestinian side too? Wrongdoing in the meaning that they didn't do enough?
Can you see anything wrong with me? I am a human being. I am educated. I am really speaking using facts and figures. I am not actually saying we must destroy Israel, we should, you know, I'm not saying, but the problem is, it's not us. The problem is most of the Western governments. The problem is, you know, they are adopting the Israeli narrative. They listen, but they are scared. Scared of United States, is scared of being accused of anti-Semitism, is scared of being accused of anti-Israelis. This is the problem. So usually the Israelis have the upper hand. The Israelis are coming from Europe. They are European. We are not European. We don't have your culture. We have different culture. So there is a barrier here. They know how to use your culture because they are part of it. We are stranger about it. Maybe in the beginning we were actually, when the imperialist countries have the upper hands, you know, the British, France, United States and others, when they have the upper hands, okay. So it is very difficult to accept our narratives, our point of view, because we used, as I said, we used to be considered as a terrorist. The Israelis said those are terrorists. Anybody who is actually part of Hamas, last war, just about 2 weeks ago, Hamas television station, which is very poor, honestly very poor, unprofessional. It was bombed by the Israeli. Imagine that, Hamas, why you bomb it? You know, okay, you consider it a terrorist organization. Why you bomb it? Why you don't let people express themselves? Imagine that. The Israeli got about 37 satellite channels, and they cannot actually bear. Wallahi, I never watched Hamas channel in my life, never. But despite that, the Israeli bombed it. So this is the problem. It is not us the problem. There is a stand not to let the Palestinian express their point of view. And when I said they got the money. You know, how can I have, for example, $800 million or $1 billion to invest in Hezbollah, for example, in order to silence the critic of the Palestinian? How can I have that? This is the problem. It is a fact, but you know, we have to live with it. And unfortunately, we are forced to live with it. But you know, we will continue. We explain, and hopefully things will change. And it will change. It will change. You know, in Germany, for example, look at Germany, simply because they have the problem of the Holocaust. No German, you know, can say, you know, the Palestinians are 100% right, or they are right, they should have, for example, they are oppressed, they are suppressed, they are marginalized, they are, you know, and talk freely. Immediately they will be accused. So this is the case, unfortunately, but we will continue to explain our point of view in a very sophisticated and civilized way.
1 minute, Ben-Dror. Just 1 minute.
A very sad joke. It's not a joke even. Two Jews are sitting together. One of them is reading a Jewish newspaper. The other one is reading an anti-Semitic newspaper. And the one who reads the Jewish newspaper, complaining, how many problems. The other one who is reading the anti-Semitic newspaper is smiling. So, and the other guy is asking, I mean, I'm crying and you are smiling. Why you are smiling? I say, I read the anti-Semitic newspaper because what do I read? Jews control the world. Jews control the banks. Jews are the strongest people in the world. Jews manipulate everything. You know what? Oh, what a pleasure. We are so strong. I didn't know that, but that's what I read. When I hear Atwan, I mean, we are controlling everything. We are so much controlling everything that the Iran deal, which is a terrible deal, for example, passed. We are so strong. We are so strong that the Jewish newspaper, the New York Times, one of the most important newspapers in the world, it's about, the balance is about 9 articles against Israel, pro-Palestinians, and 1 which is about pro-Israeli. So this is the proportion in the New York Times. And what I hear here is Jews control the media, Zionists control lobby, Israeli lobby. In the universities, 90% of the staff of the academics who speak about Israel, and I gave you some examples, are totally anti-Israelis. But Jews, including Jews, by the way, but Jews control the media, Jews control the academia. Well, what a pleasure. I didn't know it, but what a pleasure.
Good morning. I want to ask something different than all what we're discussing now. One very important thing I am a Palestinian living in Prague for many years. I want to ask about the right of return. Israel, when was recognized in the United Nations by the General Assembly was the first condition is to agree for the right of return. And for that was accepted in the United Nations. Now, as Mr. Atwan said, 25 years, discussions, and then we start again new discussion, and then leave everything with son from now to discuss. And about this law, it is just only for the Jews. Why it is just, I just want to ask, why it is just for the Jews? They have the right to return. I am, as a Palestinian, I couldn't go home and I couldn't see my family who remained there only after I get the Czech nationality. Before that, I was not allowed for me to go home where I born. Till now, my photo as a child at home in my village in Palestine. So this is just very simple. It is important now, no more discussion about this. This is the right of return. And many things thank you.
I will tell you something. Jews were forced out from Arab countries. A bigger number of Jews. They are not allowed. Now, after a conflict, when peace will prevail, and I hope it will come, and I know what the solution is, and I hope you know too, 2 states for 2 peoples, everything will be possible, which means to come, to visit, but right now we are living in a world, and I mentioned, almost 60 million people became refugees in that time. Nobody received the right of return. The only one people who is still asking for the right of return, which means the destruction of Israel, is the Palestinian people. Enough. If you want peace, let's make peace in 2 states. How comes that somebody wants a state, which is fair enough, which I'm supporting, but he wants the people to go to another state? It means that it doesn't mean peace. So if we speak about peace, it should be 2 states for 2 peoples. It should be. Then everybody will be able, when peace will prevail, everyone will be able to visit wherever he wants. I want to visit in Yemen, not because I was born there, because of family roots. And others will be able to visit in Iraq and other places. I hope the day will come. But to ask for the right of return, for me, as an Israeli, is to ask for the destruction of Israel, to ask for the return of 3 million ethnic Germans or speaking Germans to the Sudetenland. It means the destruction of the Czech Republic. Nobody is asking it, and it's clear that if people, so many millions, will ask for the right of return because they were forced out, and yes, they were forced out because of wars. If people will ask for it, there will be a total mess. We are not looking for it here in Europe. Don't look for it in the Middle East. Thank you.